Good morning. This is John Presco coming to you live from Springfield, Oregon. Uh, this is a sermon from the Radio Church of God that I inherited from Herbert Armstrong, Kore, right down the street about a half mile. This morning I read that Joseph Flavius titled James, the brother of Jesus, James the Christ. And I was just absolutely flabbergasted. Suffering from ill health. In fact, I might be dying. That's when I woke up this morning. My prostate cancer was supposed to be coming back, but it might be worse than that. I've had problems with my back. It's crippled me for over 2 years, and really nothing was done. And I'm just getting some imaging. I'm going back today to get an X-ray. I think this will be the third image. So I woke up thinking that I might die soon. And if I don't finish my books, a lot of my knowledge will die with me. So I said, better get with it, John. So I started looking at Joseph Flavius. Again, I've been looking at him for about 3-4 days. And in regards to slavery. And I'm not going to have a revelation about who the real Jesus is and what his mission was. That I might go into right now rather than wait. But I'm going to read what I wrote this morning, which is copyrighted. And everything I say is copyrighted under a special copyright I have. Took out for ministers at church so they can copyright their sermons and written and oral. So understanding that my discovery of James the Christ, if I were to go write a book, it would be a year. So what I'm going to do is a series of sermons that is going to be analyzing this information I've compiled. And I want to get it recorded on YouTube. I don't know if I were to die in 2-3 months. I don't know if my blog would stay up or not. Sermon from the New Radio Church of God. Let me show you what I'm looking at. This is on Royal Rosamond Press. Sermon from the New Radio Church of God, delivered by John the Nazarite Prophet on January 11th, 2024. Copyright. Today is January 11th, 2024. When I awoke around 3 a.m., I wondered if I was dying. If so, then the world would be deprived of my important knowledge. Does it matter? I turned on the news and drank my coffee. Netanyahu said Israel had no intention of staying in Gaza and will return it to the Palestinians. However, this is a conflicting statement. Then there was mention of Hamas would release the 100 hostages if the IDF pulls out and the bombing stops. As a proclaimed Nazarite judge after John the Baptist and James the Just, I hereby inform all the rabbis of Israel that God wants his children of Gaza and perhaps the Promised Land. Something left out there. That God wants his children of Gaza and perhaps the Promised Land. For Joseph Flavius, that it was the stoning of James that brought about the destruction of the temple and the banishment. I will be making YouTube videos to go uh, with the side of James the Christ, who I'm certain never heard his alleged brothers say this. From this time on, Jesus begins to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed on the third day, be raised to life. Well, I'll finish. Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, just merely human concerns." I am convinced this is an imputation delivered after the death of James the Christ and before the death of Peter. According to Josephus, the Jewish historian and not a Christian, James was the head of the church in Jerusalem and had more authority than Peter. James is the first bishop of Jerusalem. He is the alleged author of the epistles of James, and he wrote to the Jews of the diaspora, whose offspring were allowed to return to the Promised Land by President Harry Truman, a Christian. Was Truman aware that the Jews rejected Jesus and the New Testament? Did Truman read the Antiquities of the Jews by Joseph Flavius? Did any great rabbi since the fall of the temple read about James the Christ? In the rare history of the Jewish people in the period, did rabbis become alarmed that, that Jews spread a teaching that incurred the wrath of Orthodox Jews? Do learned Jews today know the truth about the Christ and are keeping the truth from Gentiles and Christians? South Africa has brought charges of genocide against Israel, and who has chosen a Holocaust survivor to lead the defense, and will include proof that Israel has the right to exist. What I will do here on my newspaper for the arts is give evidence God banished his children from the promised land for what they did to James the Christ. I would demand Netanyahu withdraw his army and air force and allow Christians to celebrate a belated Christmas and celebrate the life of James the Christ. Let me begin my discourse with stating, it is my belief that James the Christ was tempted by Satan to top the temple and not his brother Jesus. Satan, in truth, is God. God has offered James the bishopric of his church, the church of God. Again, and this is a quote, again the devil, God, took him up to the exceedingly high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms, synagogues of the world in their glory. And he said to him, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. God, not Satan. When I read the Bible for the first time in 1987, I was 40 years of age. I could not buy the idea that Satan was atop the temple. When I got to Acts I read the lives of Paul. I surmised he put Satan atop the temple. He has Jesus denied the teaching of the Jews in the synagogues in the diaspora that Paul is at odds with. James the Christ met his death by being thrown from atop the temple, and after surviving this fall, he was stoned and then beaten to death with fuller clubs. Consider the stoning of Stephen with approval of St. Paul. John the Nazarite judge. Here's what Origen of Alexandria said in the 3rd century. Origen of Alexandria claimed in 2 works that Josephus had mentioned James, the brother of Jesus. In Origen's commentary on Matthew, he writes, and to so great a reputation among the people for righteousness did James rise, that Joseph Flavius, who wrote the Antiquities of the Jews in 20 books, when wishing to exhibit the cause why the people suffered so great misfortunes that even the temple was razed to the ground, said that these things happened to them in accordance with the wrath of God in consequence of the thing which they had dared do against James, the brother of Jesus, who is called Christ. Wow. Wow. This is not coming from a Christian. Joseph Flavius was not a Christian. He was a Jew. He wrote the history of the Jews in 20 books. Without him doing that, there'd be very little history of the Jews. And when the World Court takes the case of Israel committing acts of genocide against the people of Gaza and the Palestinians, the defense is going to rely upon a lot of history and claims that the Jews had the right to return starting in the 30s, but in the 40s and after World War II, because this is what God wanted. But you're just hearing from Joseph Flavius that this is the reason why the Jews lost their war to Rome, and the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. Quite profound that I'm discovering this at this point in history. It's very apropos. I've been claiming that I'm the embodiment of John the Baptist, St. Francis. And I've looked at James the Nazarite. Eskenbach wrote a book about James and Paul's conflict, and I can't find it. I gotta find it. But in the book of which I read, the Epistles of James, and I read it for the first time this morning, I got up, really, I think it was 2:30, and my day began. I thought I wasn't going to live. I made my coffee, I watched MSNBC, and then I came in here and composed what I read, composed this information you'll find on my site. That's quite an amazing amount of work for someone 77 to do. It really is. I haven't done the final editing. I'm finding myself so overwhelmed with things to do and write about because of this history, where for the first time, it's becoming evident to most people that the Christian evangelical nationalists are tried to take over our government and create a Christian kingdom after their King Jesus, and they never quit. Insurrection has been continuous, and now they want to put uh, Donald Trump, who instigated the insurrection and who's a traitor to his country, back in office so he can fulfill the prophecies of Jesus Christ. And I'm just um, let's see, I put this down, refer to it, but I'm ready to throw a monkey wrench in all this. I believe that I am anointed to do this. And looking at my evil mother and my evil family, all that, my sister, but she became evil because they went after her without me protecting her. It's quite a story. And I think it really, it's almost proof that I died when I was 20 and was reborn because the evil I was born into, I mean, it was so hideous, so overwhelming. And my mother especially made a point to destroy me. She was fixated on the idea of a successful man versus an unsuccessful man. Her father was both, and I believe she destroyed him and tried to destroy me, and she might have succeeded, except I was reborn. I was dead for maybe 10 minutes or longer. And I saw God and I came back. And the timing of all this is quite incredible. The term Christ now has been altered. Um, the imputation where Jesus says, "Get behind me" to Peter, uh, was probably written right after the death of James. And I suspect Paul and his scribes wrote that Jesus is telling Peter all of a sudden, hey, I'm not going to be the Messiah. I'm not going to go up here in Bethlehem and in Jerusalem. I'm meant to be put to death. And the rules on that is if you are killed, then you are no longer the Messiah. So Paul is almost a triple agent in all this. And in the study on Wikipedia of the epistles of James, you can really see the struggle that scholars had with the epistles of James and how it conflicts with the teaching of James. It became the teaching of the first church. It was like the Greeks, and it became the Catholic Church. But now we're looking at James, the Christ, being the bishop of Jerusalem. And so whatever Jesus prophesied about having to be put to death, I think they're referring to James had to be killed. They killed him. The priesthood Sanhedrin did, and I know what he was doing, and I think he was purifying the temple. Orthodox Jews and rabbis and saints at that time hated Herod's temple. Uh, they felt that putting of the Roman ego on the gate uh, dirtied it, corrupted it. It just as Caligula put a statue of himself in the Holy Holies. So this corruption of the temple and the temple by devout Jews and saints, devout Jewish saints, and devout Jewish prophets is the ongoing battle, isn't it? Netanyahu was a Zionist gangster, committed acts of murder. The Stern Gang murdered Pope Bernadette, head of the United Nations, because the United Nations wrote a white paper saying if the Jews come back, there'll be eternal trouble and strife, which turned out to be the truth. And the Stern Gang bombed the King David Hotel, killed 90 British officers. They committed really a minor genocide against Palestinian people, pushed them off their land and pushed them onto the Gaza and the West Bank. They did really cruel, murderous, genocidal things. But that's being weighed by a big propaganda that to say something like that's anti-Semitic. Well, you just read the anti-Semitic things that Joseph Flavius was saying, a Jew historian, and he was one of the leaders of this revolt, which is never explained uh, what this revolution was, because he was captured by the Romans and taken to Rome, and he became a Flavian. He became a good friend to Emperor Titus, who wanted to marry Queen Berenice. And so the three of them were talking in Rome. So they don't want the description of the original Church of God that James was a bishop over, along with a couple of other close-knit people to Jesus, who seems to be aloof and on the side, and I'll explain why after I write on that. But I'm afraid people are going to rip me off. If they not give me any credit, and they come in as some kind of seer or bishop or whatever. Anyone but me, huh? Well, that's really the story of Greg Presco and growing up my life. I mean, my mother really worked hard to make me a failure. I mean, really, it's biblical. You know, Joseph, his brothers sold Joseph into slavery. Really, lied and did cruel things to him, and lied to his father, but that's key. Uh, and in looking at the real Jesus, you're going to look at Joseph being sold into slavery. I'm going to give you the key to this. Joseph Flavius was very interested in uh, 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 slavery, and I've got to do some intensive research on that. Oh, but I did find out that he said the other thing that survives the Jubilee is uh, setting uh, Jews that were uh, convicted of crime free on the Jubilee. That's the only thing that exists in terms of uh, the justice system. They uh, they felt that there was something to that. Interesting, isn't it? Give us Barabbas. So it's all coming together, folks. Um, this tape is 25 minutes. Um, it's going to take me a while. I'm not going to get this all down in one shot. That's why I'm going to combine an oral lessons, sermon with what I write and copyright on Roy Rosenman Press. So um, in a month from now, hopefully I'll have a lot of my book down in terms of the sermons on the Radio Church of God and copyright it. And then if I'm still alive, there won't be so much pressure on me to get my information out with a published book. Something of this size would take I need help with if someone wants to come forward and help me edit, help me compose, and structure this book. I'm welcome. You can email me at braskewitz.com at BRASKEWITZ at yahoo.com. Email me if you have any questions, if you like what you're hearing, and you want to give me some real encouragement and help. I sure appreciate it. All right, you take care out there here.